In this video, I'm going to show you how to write project from chapter 1 to 5. Also, how to research project topics and material online. Let's get started. Your project topic should be framed in a way that will accommodate two variables. For instance, the impacts of inventory management and financial performance of small and medium scale enterprises in River State. So this project's topic has two variables. The impact of inventory management is a variable, while the financial performance is also a variable. The first variable, by the left-hand side, is known as the independent variable, while the variable in the right-hand side is known as the dependent variables. There are two ways you can write projects. One is projects with conceptual framework, and the other is project without a conceptual framework. While writing projects using conceptual framework, the independent variable, you need to look for the dimensions. While the dependent variables, you need to look for the measures. For instance, the impacts of inventory management and financial performance of small and medium scale enterprises in River State. If I'm to source the dimensions of inventory management online, so what I need to do is to log in the dimensions of inventory management. I will come across different journals online, so what I need to take from the journals is two dimensions of inventory management. On the other hand, the financial performance, what I need to do online is to log in the measures of financial performance. Then I will come across different journals. So what I need to do is to take 2 or 3 measures. So in writing project with conceptual framework, first and foremost, you need to start with the background of the study. The background of the study has to do with the independent variable. You need to discuss on the independent variable. And again, you should also ensure that every sentence you make on your background of studies must end up with the scholar names and the year. If the name and the year is not there, it becomes term paper. It's no longer projects. And your background of study should accommodate at least 2 pages after typing. Outside the background of study, the next point is the statement of the problem. What does the statement of problem implies? A statement of problem means what actually is the problem why you engage on this research work. You need to state it. For example, our major topic is on impact of inventory management and financial performance of small and medium scale enterprises in River State. I need to start up writing from inventory management. At the end of it all, I also conclude it with what inefficient inventory management has caused to small and medium scale enterprises. That is the statement of problems. The third point is the objective of study. What does the objective implies? Objective means why did you embark on this research work? Most project writers put the objective in this way. To determine, the word to know is no longer in vogue. It's in this form now. To determine the extent at which this variable influences this other variable. If you are using conceptual framework, your objective of study should be based on the conceptual framework. The research question should be based on the conceptual framework, which is the intercrossing of the measures and dimensions. The research question should be, to what extent this variable influences this other variable. Then outside the research question, most times 1.5 of project is the conceptual framework itself, when now you chart the conceptual framework. Research hypothesis. What is hypothesis? Hypothesis is the suggested answer to problems, and is subdivided into 2. We have the no-alternative hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. The HO is no hypothesis, while the HI is the alternative hypothesis. Your hypothesis in chapter 1 should be framed based on your conceptual framework. If your research question is 5, your hypothesis will also be 5. So the numbers of your research questions should be equivalent to your numbers of hypotheses. The significance of the study means what the benefit of this project to the society at large. That is the significance. Then beside the significance of the studies, we have the scope of the study. Are you conducting this research to the entire world or to a municipal or to states? You must specify it. Operational definition of terms. Operational definition of terms means the actual time you use in your project work. So that is the end of chapter 1 of every project. The chapter 2 of project writing has to go in two ways. One is project writing with conceptual framework and project writing without conceptual framework. So if you are using conceptual framework in writing projects, your chapter 2 should go in this way. The first of it we call the literature review, and the second should be the theoretical literature or theoretical review. It has to do with scholar theories of independent variables. Beside the theoretical review or literature, they will come to look at the independent variable, the concepts of inventory management. Inventory management is our independent variable. So we need to write at least 2 to 3 pages of inventory management. Then you now come to develop the dimensions of inventory management. At least each dimension, you must achieve 2 pages after typing. Then beside the dimensions, you come to the dependent variable, which is the financial performance. Achieve 2 pages of financial performance. Then before the measures, at least 2 pages of each measures of financial performance. After that, then you can now come to empirical review. Empirical review of projects is different from literature review. Empirical reviews has to do with various scholars' founding of different research work based on your independent variables. The chapter 3, which is the research methodology. First, you have your research design. Research designs imply what design do you want to apply in your research work. Then beside the research design, you come to the population of the study. Population is an object of interest. For instance, if I'm working on inventory management and financial performance of small and medium scale enterprises in Rivers State, so my population of study is the small and medium scale enterprises in Rivers State. So outside the population of study, you come to the sampling techniques. Then when do you apply samplings in your research work? You apply sampling when the population is too large. For instance, if the small and medium scale enterprises in Rivers State are so much that I cannot reassure, what I need to do is to apply sampling techniques. It can be in form of every 10 small and medium enterprises account, the 11th one represent 1. Or 5 to 1, means every 5 enterprises accounts, the 6th one represent 1. And the sample size. The sample size is the actual size you want to use for your research work. For instance, if the population is 100, and I don't want to make use of the 100 small and medium scale enterprises based on cost and time. So I can reduce the number using sample size determination. Beside the sample size, then we'll come to method of data collection. Then how do you source your data? There are 2 ways of sourcing data. The first one is the primary source, and again is the secondary source. Primary source has to do with interview, questionnaires, and observation. While the secondary source are already published journals. Method of data analysis. This has to do with the statistical method you apply in analyzing your data. There are different statistical methods. We have the correlation, we have the regression, we have the mean, we have the standard deviations. There are so many statistical methods. It depends on the one you know best. So that is the end of chapter 3. Chapter 4 has to do with data presentation. You can present your data using different statistical methods. Chapter 4 is the point to test your relationship between your 2 variables. And if the value you assigned for your population or sample is more than 30, is from 30 henceforth, you are not using T statistics. You are using Z statistics. But when your population is less than 30, you are not using Z statistics, you are using T statistics. If your Z tabulated is greater than your Z computed, means your research work is insignificant. But when the Z computed is greater than Z tabulated, it means there is a relationship between the two variables. If your T computed, when the sample size is below 30, if your T computed is greater than T tabulated, there's a relationship between the two variables, which is there's a relationship between inventory management and financial performance. The chapter 5 has to do with summary, conclusion, and recommendation. And your recommendation has to come from your chapter 4, your founding from your chapter 4. If your founding is negative, means you have a negative recommendation. Be sure that your founding in chapter 4 is positive, to give you positive recommendation. Lastly, you have to reference your work. That is the end of full project work.